Under house arrest in her apartment, Sarah sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by delivery food containers and case files her lawyer had left. Her laptop screen glowed in the darkness, illuminating 3 years' worth of photos with Marcus' holidays, vacations, family dinners, all eyes. She'd been staring at her computer's webcam, puzzling over the tiny scratch beside it that she'd never noticed before, when a thought struck her. Daniel had insisted on fixing her laptop last month. With trembling fingers, she opened the terminal and typed in commands from her coding days. "Oh God," she whispered as hidden files populated her screen. Hundreds of them, time-stamped every few hours for months. Her own face stared back at her from thumbnails. Sleeping, working, changing clothes. They'd been watching her, studying her patterns, her habits, her passwords. But it was an older folder that made her chest constrict. Marcus_UCB_2015. She clicked it open and felt the room spin. Photos from University of California, Berkeley showed Marcus and Daniel together at parties in dorm rooms, arms slung around each other's shoulders. Best friends. Years before Marcus accidentally bumped into her at that coffee shop, before he spontaneously asked for her number. A video file blinked in the corner. phase_2_planning 4. Sarah's fingers hovered over the trackpad. Did she really want to know more? The timestamp showed 2 months ago, when Marcus had taken Daniel on that brotherly bonding fishing trip. She clicked play. The timing has to be perfect. Marcus's voice came through clearly. The camera showed a cabin interior, both men hunched over laptops. "Once the quarterly reports hit, we trigger the transfers." Daniel nodded, looking so much younger without his usual confident smile. "Sarah's always double-checking everything. Won't she notice?" "That's why we needed someone on the inside," Marcus replied, pulling up Morrison Financial's database. "Your sister's credentials give us perfect cover. By the time anyone realizes what happened, the money will be moved through 6 different countries." "And Sarah?" Marcus's laugh sent chills down her spine. "Who's going to believe her? We've got 3 years of digital evidence showing her planning this. The best part, she actually helped us build the security system we're using to rob them." The video continued, but Sarah was already pulling up her email, searching for patterns she'd missed. Every major fraud incident corresponded with times Marcus had asked about her schedule. Every security upgrade she'd implemented had been followed by suspicious network activity. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Rodriguez next door. "Sarah, dear, your brother just stopped by looking for you. He seemed worried. Shall I tell him you're home?" Sarah's hand clenched around her phone. Daniel wasn't checking on her. He was checking if she'd discovered their game. "No," she typed back. "Please don't tell anyone I'm here. And Mrs. R, be careful who you trust." The shrill ping of Sarah's phone pierced the darkness at 2:47 a.m. She jolted awake, instinctively reaching for Marcus beside her, but his side of the bed was empty and cold. The security alert notification glowed on her screen. "Unauthorized access detected. Workstation 27B. Her workstation. Sarah threw on her coat over her silk pajamas and shoved her feet into the first shoes she found. The 20-minute drive to Morrison Financial's downtown office took 12 minutes in the empty streets. Her heart pounded as she swiped her keycard at the underground parking entrance. The security guard Thomas giving her a puzzled wave. "Everything okay, Ms. Chen?" he called out. "Just forgot some files for tomorrow's meeting," she lied, her heels clicking rapidly across the marble lobby. The 27th floor was eerily silent, emergency lights casting long shadows between the cubicles. Sarah's office door was closed, just as she'd left it, but when she pushed it open, her monitor was glowing, the screen showing active database queries she definitely hadn't initiated. "That's impossible," she whispered, quickly disconnecting the Ethernet cable. She'd developed a habit of physically shutting down her computer every evening, a practice that had earned her gentle teasing from colleagues about being paranoid. Her phone buzzed again. "Marcus, where are you? Everything okay?" Before she could reply, a movement caught her eye through her office window. A shadow passed quickly through the cubicle farm. There and gone so fast she might have imagined it. The elevator dinged in the distance. Sarah pulled up the security camera feeds on her phone. But the last hour's footage was corrupted, nothing but static. Her fingers trembled as she dialed Thomas. Did anyone else come up to 27 recently? No, ma'am. You're the only one who's badged in tonight. Back at her desk, Sarah began documenting the unauthorized access. The system logs showed multiple large data transfers, all authenticated with her credentials. But the timestamps were wrong. Several occurred while she was in client meetings, one during her dental appointment last week. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Daniel. Hey sis, having trouble sleeping? Want to grab breakfast before work? Also, that security program I mentioned, I can install it tomorrow. Better safe than sorry, right? Sarah stared at her brother's message, a strange unease settling in her stomach. How did he know she was awake? And why was Marcus so quick to know she'd left their bed? The overhead lights suddenly hummed to life, making her jump. Morrison's early birds would start arriving soon. Sarah gathered her things, trying to shake off her paranoia. But as she drove home in the gray dawn, she couldn't stop thinking about that moving shadow, and why the security footage had chosen that exact moment to fail. In her rearview mirror, a dark sedan pulled out from the parking garage and followed her for 3 blocks before turning east. She noted the partial plate number in her phone, not yet realizing she was documenting evidence of her own destruction. Take the plea deal, Sarah. Please. Marcus's voice cracked with practiced concern as they sat in her lawyer's office. 3 years probation, no jail time. You can start over. Sarah kept her expression carefully broken, vulnerable, the same look she'd rehearsed for hours with Maya. The wire beneath her blouse felt ice-cold against her skin. I don't understand how this happened, she whispered, watching Marcus's reflection in the window. His micro-expressions were fascinating now that she knew to look for them. The slight twitch of satisfaction when she appeared weak, the calculated way he reached for her hand. Sometimes good people make mistakes, he soothed. The pressure you were under, the responsibilities. Like Jennifer Torres? Sarah asked softly. Marcus's hand froze above hers. Who? The bank executive in Seattle, or Catherine Murphy in Boston? Sarah kept her voice trembling, but her eyes locked onto his. Did you meet Daniel at Berkeley before or after you destroyed them? The mask slipped for just a second. Surprise, then fury, then back to concern. Sarah, honey, you're not making sense. The stress is making me crazy. That's what you told the others too, right? She pulled up an email on her phone. Maya Patel sends her regards. Marcus's chair scraped back. This meeting is over. You clearly need help, Sarah. Professional help. But Sarah wasn't done. Thing is, Marcus, you and Daniel got sloppy. Used the same code snippets from previous scams. The same offshore accounts in the Caymans. She smiled. The same accounts you're planning to use for Mrs. Rodriguez's inheritance. All pretense vanished from Marcus's face. Prove it. Oh, I will. In fact, Sarah checked her watch. Maya should be finishing her analysis of Daniel's laptop right about now. Amazing what a concerned sister wellness check can accomplish. Did you know he never changed his apartment's security code? Still my birthday. Marcus pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the keys. No response. He won't answer, Sarah said quietly. He's a bit busy with the FBI, trying to save himself by telling them everything about your operation. Daniel always did crack under pressure. The door burst open. Agent Martinez entered, followed by Maya, now revealed as Agent Patel. Marcus Reynolds, Martinez announced, you have the right to remain silent. As they led him away, Marcus hissed, you don't know what you're doing. We're not alone in this. Sarah stood, finally removing the wire. I know. That's exactly what I'm counting on. The others are going to get sloppy, worried. And when they do, she leaned close, whispered, I'll be ready. You taught me well, after all. His face went pale as the implications hit him. Sarah Chen wasn't just fighting back. She was dismantling their entire network. Sarah stared at her laptop screen, the words blurring through her tears. The Wall Street Journal headline screamed, Morrison financial director charged in $40 million fraud scheme. Below it, her corporate headshot smiled confidently. a photo Marcus had insisted on helping her choose. The comment section was brutal. Another greedy executive. Should have known a 28-year-old director was too good to be true. Lock her up? Her phone buzzed with another blocked number. Since the story broke, former colleagues had been leaking red flags to every reporter in town. James from IT claimed she'd asked suspicious questions about the firewall. Rebecca from accounting suddenly remembered late-night office visits. Even her mentor, David, had given an interview about her unhealthy ambition. A knock at her door made her jump. Through the peephole, she saw Mrs. Rodriguez holding a casserole dish. "Mija," the elderly woman said as Sarah cracked the door, "you haven't eaten in days, and there's someone here you need to meet." Behind Mrs. Rodriguez stood a striking South Asian woman in a crisp blazer. Maya Patil. She introduced herself, sliding a business card through the gap. "Cybersecurity specialist, and I know you're innocent." Sarah's laugh was hollow. "Join the club of one." "Club of four, actually," Maya corrected, pulling up an email on her phone. "I've been tracking Marcus Reynolds and Daniel Chen for 18 months. You're not their first target, but you could be their last." The email showed 3 other women: a bank executive in Seattle, a hedge fund manager in Boston, a tech CEO in Austin. All successful, all framed for fraud, all destroyed by men they trusted. "But their evidence," Sarah started, "is good," Maya finished. "Really good. But they made mistakes. Tiny ones, like using the same deepfake algorithm for the security footage, or recycling code from previous scams." Mrs. Rodriguez touched Sarah's arm. "Let us help, Mija. I've watched you bring Daniel soup when he was sick, seen you work until dawn to support his dreams. What they did to you." Her voice hardened. "It's not right." Maya's phone buzzed. Her expression darkened as she read the message. "They're moving faster than I thought. Marcus just filed for a restraining order, claiming you're harassing him. And Daniel." She hesitated. "What about my brother? He's been asking Mrs. Rodriguez about her inheritance. The same pattern as their other victims. They don't stop at one con." Sarah felt something shift inside her. The tears dried. The fog of betrayal lifted, replaced by cold clarity. For weeks, she'd been thinking like a victim. It was time to start thinking like the financial analyst who'd earned that director position. "Tell me everything you know," she said, opening the door fully. "And Maya, bring your laptop. We're going hunting." The Morrison Financial boardroom buzzed with anticipation as Sarah stood at the head of the mahogany table, her quarterly presentation projected on the screen behind her. 20 pairs of eyes watched as she confidently walked them through the department's record-breaking numbers. "And as you can see from these projections," Sarah gestured to the final slide, "our new risk management protocols have increased efficiency by 32% while..." The boardroom doors burst open. 3 FBI agents in dark suits strode in, flanked by corporate security. Sarah's words died in her throat as she recognized Agent Lisa Martinez, who had given a cybersecurity seminar at Morrison just last month. "Sarah Chen," Martinez announced, her former friendliness replaced by cold professionalism, "we need you to step away from the computer and keep your hands visible." The room erupted in whispers. Sarah's boss, Richard Morrison, AEA, stood up so abruptly his chair slammed against the wall. "What is the meaning of this?" A second agent was already connecting a laptop to the presentation screen. The quarterly report disappeared, replaced by security footage of the office at night. Sarah watched in horror as the timestamp showed 1:23 a.m. last Thursday, when she'd been at the emergency room with food poisoning. Yet there she was on screen, entering the building, her face clearly visible as she looked directly at the camera. "That's impossible," Sarah whispered. "I was at St. Mary's Hospital. I have records. We have documentation of systematic fraud spanning the last 8 months." Martinez cut in, sliding printouts across the table. "Forged signatures, doctored books, and a complex network of offshore accounts. All trails lead back to your credentials, your computers, your authorization codes." The evidence was overwhelming. Screenshots of transfers she'd never made, emails she'd never written, even her digital signature, perfectly replicated on documents she'd never seen. Through the boardroom's glass walls, Sarah spotted Marcus and Daniel rushing down the hallway, faces etched with concern. Perfect timing, as always. But just before they entered, she caught something that made her blood run cold. A quick exchange of glances, a subtle nod between them. In that fraction of a second, their masks slipped. And suddenly, everything clicked. The USB drive, the corrupted security footage, Daniel's security program, Marcus's late-night absences. They weren't coming to support her. They were coming to witness their handiwork. As Agent Martinez began reading her rights, Sarah's mind was already racing ahead, cataloging every detail, every inconsistency. They thought they'd broken her. Instead, they'd awakened something far more dangerous, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Ms. Chen, Morrison's voice cracked with disappointment. How could you do this to us? Sarah kept her eyes locked on her brother and boyfriend through the glass as she replied, That's exactly what I intend to find out. The Chen family living room was a battlefield of tension. Sarah sat on the edge of her mother's floral sofa, surrounded by concerned relatives who'd gathered for the intervention Daniel and Marcus had orchestrated. Through the bay window, she caught a glimpse of Agent Martinez's surveillance van, disguised as a utility truck. We're here because we love you, Sarah, her Aunt Susan began, reading from a prepared statement. Your actions have hurt this family. Have they? Sarah interrupted, pulling out her laptop. Let's talk about family then. She connected to the TV, broadcasting live to the FBI and media outlets. Let's talk about how my brother and my boyfriend are part of a criminal organization called the Glass Ceiling Syndicate. Daniel jumped up. Sarah, you're not well. Sit down, little brother. Her voice could have frozen hell. Remember when you taught me to code? You said I was a natural. Guess what? I still am. Her screen displayed a complex web of transactions, names, and dates. See, while you were trying to frame me, I created a program to analyze your pattern. Young, successful women in finance, all destroyed by men they trusted. But it wasn't just about money, was it? Marcus tried to reach for the laptop. Sarah's finger hovered over the enter key. Touch it, and every financial agency in the country gets this data. You're bluffing, he snarled. Like you bluffed about loving me, about being a stranger to Daniel when we met. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Your organization targets women who break into male-dominated fields. You destroy them, steal their assets, and use the money to fund more operations. 27 victims in 15 cities. The room erupted in chaos. Family members stared at their phones as the story broke across social media. Daniel's face went ashen. Sarah, please, he whispered. They'll kill me. Who will? The board members. The ones funding this operation. She pulled up another screen. Names, addresses, offshore accounts. I have everything. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? That I wouldn't recognize the coding signature from your security program? Marcus lunged for the door, but FBI agents were already entering. In the confusion, Daniel crumbled. It wasn't supposed to go this far, he cried. They approached me at Berkeley, said they'd fund my startup. All I had to do was help them target specific women. Marcus was already working for them. Sarah watched as her brother spilled everything: board members' names, shell companies, other operatives. The syndicate's entire infrastructure, exposed by its weakest link. Agent Martinez handcuffed Marcus as he spat. You think this changes anything? Women like you still won't be taken seriously in finance. Sarah smiled coldly. That's where you're wrong. After today, they'll know exactly how serious we are. 1 year later, Sarah stood at the podium of the National Financial Security Summit, her voice carrying across the packed auditorium. The glass ceiling above had been specially designed for this new conference center, bulletproof, unbreakable, and completely transparent. The greatest weapon against fraud isn't technology, she said, her red power suit a stark contrast to the prison orange Marcus and Daniel wore as they watched her live-stream speech from their separate cells. It's truth. And truth, like trust, is something you have to fight for. The audience of 5,000 included faces she knew well. Mrs. Rodriguez, beaming from the front row. Agent Maya Patel, now her closest friend and business partner, and dozens of women who'd been targeted by the glass ceiling syndicate, all reclaiming their power. When my brother and boyfriend betrayed me, they thought they were destroying my future, Sarah continued, her fingers trailing over the scar on her wrist from where she'd fought off Marcus's final desperate attack. Instead, they gave me my true purpose. On the screens behind her, statistics rolled. 57 syndicate members arrested, $30 million recovered, 15 women fully exonerated, but more importantly, 300 new female executives promoted in the financial sector, a 40% increase in fraud prevention hiring, and Sarah's new security firm leading the industry in both innovation and equality. Today, I'm announcing the launch of the Phoenix Initiative, she revealed, as the screens displayed a new cybersecurity platform, a system designed not just to prevent fraud, but to protect and empower those who've been historically marginalized in our industry. Because the next generation of leaders shouldn't have to fight the battles we did. In the back of the room, she spotted a group of young women, interns from her mentorship program. Their eyes shone with the same fire she'd once had, before betrayal tried to extinguish it. To those who tried to silence us, Sarah's voice took on an edge of steel. Thank you. You taught us exactly how strong we are. And to anyone facing what seems like insurmountable betrayal, you are not alone. Your story isn't over. Sometimes, the people who try to break you become the reason you rebuild yourself into something unbreakable. As thunderous applause filled the room, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Maya. New case. Another syndicate targeting women in tech. You in? Sarah smiled, thinking of the scared, broken woman she'd been a year ago. That woman died in the ashes of betrayal. This woman, stronger, wiser, unstoppable, was ready for the next battle. Always, she texted back. After all, some glass ceilings are meant to be shattered. Sarah Chen's fingers traced the edge of the mysterious USB drive she'd found in Marcus's jacket pocket, her Sunday laundry routine momentarily forgotten. The small black device felt heavy with unspoken questions. But before her analytical mind could venture down that rabbit hole, her phone buzzed with Marcus's text. Don't forget, dinner at La Maison tonight, celebrating my brilliant girlfriend's promotion. A smile replaced her frown as she tucked the drive into her desk drawer. Of course, Marcus would have work files on a USB. He was always bringing projects home from his consulting job. Her tendency to overthink things was exactly what Marcus always teased her about, usually while wrapping her in one of his warm embraces that made all her doubts melt away. The late September sunset painted her downtown apartment in shades of amber as Sarah slipped into her favorite black dress, the one Marcus said made her look like a young Audrey Hepburn. At 28, becoming the youngest director in Morrison Financial's history was no small feat. The weight of her new responsibilities should have felt daunting, but Sarah had always thrived under pressure, growing up as the de facto parent to her younger brother Daniel after their parents' divorce had taught her that. Her phone chimed again, this time with a photo from Daniel. He was already at the restaurant, setting up what looked like a surprise celebration. The image showed him arranging champagne flutes, his boyish grin barely containing his excitement. Despite their 8-year age gap, Daniel had grown into her best friend and biggest cheerleader. The tech startup he'd founded 2 years ago was taking off, and he never missed a chance to tell people how his big sister's support had made it all possible. As Sarah applied her signature red lipstick, her work email pinged. The subject line caught her eye. Urgent. Account transfer authorization required. She clicked it open, scanning the contents with the quick efficiency that had become her trademark. The email detailed several large transfers from the firm's main accounts, but something about the formatting seemed off. Probably another phishing attempt. They'd had several lately. She forwarded it to IT Security with a quick note about checking their spam filters. Later, she would replay this moment in her mind hundreds of times. The USB drive in her desk, the perfectly timed dinner invitation, Daniel's photo of the champagne setup, the suspicious email. All the warning signs had been there, like puzzle pieces waiting to be assembled. But in that moment, Sarah was simply a successful young woman getting ready to celebrate with the two people she trusted most in the world. She had no way of knowing that every step she'd climbed up the corporate ladder had been carefully orchestrated to set up her fall, or that the evening celebration would be the last time she felt truly secure in her perfectly crafted life.